Ladies and gentlemen, it is 3 o'clock. We have a long agenda, so if you'd make your way to your seats, please. And we'll call the December meeting of the Emerald Coast Utilities Authority to order. Mr. Perkins has agreed to do the invocation. We invite you to join us by standing.
Almighty God, thank you for the wonderful season of friendship and visitation that we have with people, renewing old bonds. Thank you so much for sending us a new board member to represent District 3. We know that he is chosen not only by the governor, but by you, Lord, as we all are in some small way, whether we're a board member or a citizen participating in this. Use us all for your good intentions to spread your joy, peace, love, happiness, and sound decision making from this board. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. If you will indulge me, I'd like to move number 4 up to in front of number 3, and at this point to swear in the new board member, if the attorney and Dr. Alexander will please proceed to the podium. Mr. Perkins, did you, your light's on. Okay. Welcome on behalf of the board. We are all thrilled to have you here, believe me, and thrilled to have your district represented with a voice.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have any additions to the agenda? Mr. Johnson.
Yes, ma'am. Everybody should have a copy of item 10F revised, which will replace 10F.
Yes. Okay. 10F revised, if you would put that with your packet. Anyone else have any additions to the agenda? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Please vote. Oh, I'm sorry. We need Dr. Walker.
I move adoption of the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Campbell? No. Okay, now please vote. All right, so you're going to do it right here, so you have yes or no or abstain. And it passes 5-0. Dr. Alexander, when I was on the city council, came by appointment, and so I didn't know any of the protocols. And there was a very crusty old retired Navy guy who sat next to me, and he said, "You don't need to do a thing. I'll show you what to punch and when to punch it." So it's my turn.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay, the next item is public hearings. the proposed establishment of a revised sanitation service charges in Santa Rosa County, Florida, as well as the town of Jay, Florida. I call this public hearing to order. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? If not, the public hearing is closed. I'll entertain a motion to adopt Agenda 19-11. Mr. Perkins.
I move adoption of Resolution 1911.
There's a second?
I second.
Okay, and is there any discussion? If not, please vote. And it passes 5-0. Doesn't that sound good? Beautiful words. Okay, the next item is the open forum. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard in open forum? Do you have any pink slips? Anyone? Okay, the open forum is now closed. Item 7A is special recognition award to Ms. Catherine Booker, former ECUA Citizens Advisory Committee member. Thanking her for her service, and I don't believe I see Ms. Booker in the audience, so I assume that Sharon will take care of sending that recognition to her. Item 7B is
Yep.
special.
I wanted
I'm
to-
sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Campbell. Sorry.
I just wanted to publicly thank Catherine Booker for her service on the CAC, and I hope that she can come in and receive her award, but if not, I wanted to publicly recognize what a good job she did for us.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Item 7B is special recognition award to Mr. Kevin Hammer, former ECUA Citizens Advisory Committee member, and I don't believe Mr. Hammer is here either. So if you will, Ms. Harrell, you will send that. Ms. Campbell.
And I'd also like to publicly thank Mr. Hammer. He had some of the most enlightening questions always on this board, and I appreciate his time.
Thank you. Dr. Walker.
Yes, as the one who appointed Mr. Hammer, I also want to state my appreciation for what he did. He did not often speak up, but when he did, it was almost always a good question or a good suggestion. In that regard, he was a very valuable committee member. As all of you, I think, have realized by now, I am now appointing committee members for a one-year term only and then going on to someone else in an effort to educate a larger number of people about what goes on at ECUA. And I think there's no better way to do that than to put someone on the Citizens Advisory Committee for a year. And because every time I've done that, they go away and I'll say exit interviews that I have with them. They say that they've gone away much more informed and much more impressed by the quality of the work done at ECUA. But I really appreciate Mr. Hammer agreeing to serve in that regard. He's thinking about running for the District 5 seat someday, and I hope that he will do so.
So you're training your competition.
I invited him to run this year.
That's confidence. Okay, thank you. The next item is the Recycle Star Award, and for those of you who do not remember, we take time every month to recognize people who do an exemplary job of their recycling, and we have a list of people who have done a great job, and they will, if selected, get some awards and recognition and a yard sign and various other things. We have 18 names in our list, a random list, and I am going to ask Dr. Alexander to pick one of these out and read the number.
17.
Okay, good. That was a trick because we had a 6-9 problem one time.
Dr. Alexander just passed his first test.
He
right?
did, yes. And the winner is Angie Izzy. So if our public information staff could contact Ms. Izzy and give her the proper awards. Thank you. We come now to an award of our own, and Mr. Johnson, will you handle this one?
Certainly. First, I'd like to say, when I came back to work here, one of the first things I did to kind of get back up to speed was go to the website and pull up the comprehensive annual financial report for ECUA. It's got a wealth of knowledge about ECUA, the number of customers we have, and just a bunch of stuff. And I remember from my years here that our finance department often, consistently has received awards for excellence in preparing the financial report. And so they have been given the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reportings by the Government Finance Officers Association for the 31st year in a row. And we're very proud of our finance department and wish to recognize them for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sheldon, for all that you and your team do. Appreciate it. Item 8A is approval of the minutes of number A, the organizational board meeting of November 19th, 2019. Is there a motion? Dr. Alexander?
Am I approving these?
No, you have punched your button, which
Oh.
says you want to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
That was on accident.
It's all right. All right, Ms. Campbell?
I'd like to move, can I move them both at one time?
Yes, you may.
Okay, I'll move them.
And I second.
Okay. So we have moved and seconded items A and B, the approval of minutes of the organizational and regular board meeting. Any changes or corrections? If not, please vote. And it passes 5-0. The speak button is what you press when you want to be recognized, and then after you're recognized, you turn it off. That is when they are working correctly, and we're going to assume that they're all working correctly today. Sure. Okay, the next item, item 9, is the executive director search. You all have received big packets and done lots of homework, so let's recognize Mr. Benzinger to just kind of give us an overlay of the process and how we will proceed. You're recognized, Mr. Benzinger. Turn on your speak
I
button.
think I have, oh, yes, I have it.
Yes.
Colin Benzinger and Associates, and as you know, we did have a finalist, a selected party for the ECUA Executive Director position who got us to the altar and then fled. I'm being a little facetious, but she withdrew at that point due to family concerns. We went back out again. We had about 38 to 40 applicants. It's a better group in terms of credentials right now than I think the first group was. It is lacking in diversity, and you know, one of the things we could do to try and get more women, get more minorities into the process would be to delay probably another month and then see what we can do during that period. I would like to see more diversity. We didn't get it, though. So that's really a call that the board needs to make. The other alternative would be for you to go forward and select finalists and go from there.
Okay, Dr. Alexander.
Yeah, and you know, in regards to, I had a chance before today to take a look at the candidates, the number of that were submitted by Mr. Banzinger, and take a look at the selection process to where we are now. And he is absolutely correct. It certainly does not reflect a broad spectrum of diversity in it, which I'm quite sure everybody on this board is in support of. So what I would be willing to do is to assist Mr. Banzinger, if necessary, to kind of give him some names of a variety of organizations in which he can reach out to professional engineering organizations, for example, that have large membership of women or Asian Americans or Hispanics, African Americans, whatever. And I think that will give us a much richer pool to be able to choose from, because we really don't know the depth what the talent might be out there. I think until we kind of maybe we can take a step back and take a little time to,
So
if possible.
are you moving that we delay this process while we seek to recruit candidates of greater diversity?
Yes, ma'am, I would like to move that if we could delay the process for 30 days or 1 month, that would give Mr. Banzinger an opportunity to seek further.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Yeah, I
Mr.
did.
Perkins?
Well, I concur. I would like to see more diversity, and we may or may not get that. Hopefully we will. The person we had chosen was a woman, you know, and unfortunately, she you know, had other commitments that she had to live up to. So I think the board is very open to diversity. We've consistently been the most diverse board in this area for many years, and so I think that it makes sense to, not only on this, but on a couple of other items, it makes sense for us to step back, take a little time, look at them, make good deliberative decisions. The worst decisions are made in haste. And so if we take time, study, and I'm not saying drag it out. I'm sure Mr. Johnson, you know, wants to get on with his life and his interim role, but I don't think taking another month would hurt, especially if it would give some sense of comfort to our new board member. I think it would be the prudent thing to do. One thing about our board is that we're very collegial. We work well together, very respectful of each other. We disagree at times, but we do so agreeably. We don't have a lot of where we're trying to, you know, cut each other's throat politically or anything like that. And so I think you'll find that we're pretty hospitable even when we disagree. But I would fully support the motion and encourage the other board members to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Ms. Campbell?
I fully support it as well. I think that District 3 has long been without a voice. And so to have a District 3 rep come in and have to make a decision that's going to affect this board long after we're all gone. I do want Mr. Banzinger to let those people know that have applied that I feel like this was a really strong group of people, stronger than we had the time before. And I did have 7 people chosen that I'd like to interview, but I do not have any problem at all waiting a month to see if maybe we get a little more diversity in there. So, but let them know that we really appreciate them, and there are names that are in the running.
Dr. Walker?
I am opposed to the motion because we have gone so long that we have tried twice. We tried in very good faith with regard to diversity. And I think we need to move on with all due respect to our new board member. I think we should move on and try to see if we can make a selection from the people who are before us, candidates before us today. We engaged in a search, which I'm trusting Mr. Banzinger in this, but I'm confident that he made every attempt to advertise the position in every appropriate way in the trade. I'm quite sure that every county administrator, city manager, and director of public works or director of engineering in the country had an opportunity to see this job announcement. And I think we should go ahead. That's my position.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Mr. Banzinger, if we delay this, do you believe that you can have some additional candidates to us by our next board meeting so that we can proceed?
Your next board meeting, I believe, is at roughly the end of January, the 27th.
So you have a little more time. than
Yeah,
you
so we have
typically
6
do.
weeks, and it would frankly give us a little more time even to vet some of the candidates we have presented. The answer is yes. I believe we would probably get additional candidates and a more diverse pool.
And you believe that you can create a more diverse pool than you have now?
I'm sorry, I
You
can't.
believe that you can get a more diverse pool
Yes, I do.
at a time? Okay. And do you expect we will have much attrition from the pool that we currently have?
Yes, I do. I mean, we will, it's, you know, it's 6 weeks delay. Some of these people have, you know, put their name out there, they're in public, and we will lose some, I think.
I would, I can count, I think this is going to pass. So I would hope that you would reassure the candidates that are in there that this is a temporary delay, but not, and we would certainly hope that they would stay if they would. Obviously, we can't dictate to them.
I will certainly do so because it's in your best interest and in mine.
Yes, okay.
We need to keep this pool as strong as we can, so, while augmenting it.
Thank you. And the lights are all lit up. It's like Christmas here. So, Dr. Alexander, you're recognized now.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Banzinger for making that observation himself. That's his observation in regards to the diversity of this list that we've been given. And I certainly do respect the fact that y'all have been at this for some time, but now that I'm representing District 3, I think residents in my district from North Hill to East Hill, from the south end to the north end of the county, as far as my district goes, would certainly like to know that at least we made an effort in terms of reaching out to a number of other professional organizations that may have minority or women leadership who could potentially be candidates for this role, because I think at the end of the day, we're looking for the very best candidate, regardless of race or gender. But I think it is our responsibility as a board to make sure, with your, with the help of Mr. Banzinger, that we have an opportunity to, at a minimum, be able to say that we, in good faith and good effort, explored all the possibilities that are out there. And but that's certainly me being very respectful in endorsing his recommendation, but being very respectful of the work that you all have done up to this point.
Thank you, Dr. Alexander. Mr. Perkins.
Well, diversity is a strength, and I think that that's one of the good things that we have about Dr. Alexander being on the board with us now, is that it, a lot of just ways things have been done over the years, a lot of times certain minority communities don't get reached, and if you have access to people in higher learning or affiliations that you might be able to reach people we can't reach, and if Dr. Alexander can help with that, I think that's a strength for this board. And who knows, which candidates it may produce. It may produce someone that eventually becomes a director. It may not. But I think at the very least, it's a strength for us to try that and to go forward with it. And so I'm in favor of doing that. Now, I'm also curious as to whether it would help you for us to go ahead and rank these, even though we're waiting a month, or do you think we should wait until we get all of the candidates to rank these, so that some of these are thinned out and they know, hey, it's probably good to look elsewhere, and some of these will know that, hey, there's a chance for you still in this?
Mr. Benziger, if you would respond to us.
That's a very good question, and one I've been pondering over the last few minutes. I think it would be beneficial to the ones that are not high on the list, assuming that they're not high on the list of the majority of you. On the other hand, it's kind of like, if we lose some, we may need some of these that are not higher on the list. So it's catch-22.
You don't have to supply an answer
Yeah.
right now. At the end of the meeting, you might, though.
Well, I think it probably would be helpful, and maybe if we could pick the top 10, and that would leave us with, 5 that would be, roughly 10, that would leave us with 5 that are probably not going to be considered. It's a difficult question.
I only came prepared to pick 7, but we'll figure it out. But anyways, ranking them may be helpful.
Ms. Campbell?
Well, I tend to agree, only because I would not want to lose the top 7. I mean,
Yeah.
There's a couple of these that are really, really good, and I would just not want to, I don't want to take a chance of losing them. So if we could, I'm in favor of choosing 7 and, or even 10. I mean, I could take a few minutes and pick 3 more.
If we can, just a moment, and Dr. Walker, if you'll hold, Mr. Beasley has weighed in, and he may have an opinion on this.
I'm sorry, I've been open for some time. It was back to the timing issue. I just wanted to remind the
Oh.
board that the code requires replacement of the vacancy 6 months from the period of vacancy, which we determined to be the November 17th date. So you do have time to
Okay.
open the applications up again. That would put us till May. Also reminding you that the interim director's contract conveniently times out at the same date in May. The 1 day, it times out 1 day after the 6 month, with the assumption that you'll have complied with the code and have a replacement at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Dr. Walker?
Two comments. One is, I don't know how much diversity we have considered, because when you look at the applications, you don't see anything that, unless it's a female name, that's about the only information you get about diversity in the applications. So I guess Mr. Banziger has said we're short on diversity, so I suppose we are. But presence or absence of diversity was not part of what we considered, I think, in this second effort. The other comment is that we do have some good candidates in this batch, I think, and I would hate to lose them. Period.
May I speak against going through what is essentially this process twice, in terms of ranking these people and then coming back in a month and doing it again? There is some additional vetting that Mr. Benziger wants to do and needs to do. Once that comes forward, even what we're seeing today may change. And it's pretty grueling for everybody to go through the final vetting, and to do it twice, I think, might not have the best outcome. You know, if we lose somebody, so be it, and maybe we gain some others. But I really am reluctant to see us go through this process and then have to do it again when things may change. Let's do it once with the best field we have.
The motion on the floor is just to delay it for 30 days. There has
That's
been
right.
no motion to,
Right.
just rank or anything. We're just
Yes.
inquiring.
Do you have a second?
There was a second.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Ms. Campbell, did you, okay. Dr. Walker?
The suggestion by Mr. Perkins was that we provide a service to some of these candidates by letting them, by ranking our choices and by letting others know that where they stand, so that they can go look elsewhere or whatever. I think that's a kind thing to do, and I think it would take me 5 minutes to write down my choices, the ones I would like to see interviewed, and I think it wouldn't take long at all.
Okay, the motion on the floor, if I see no more lights, is that we delay this process for another month to seek out a more diverse field of candidates. And that motion is seconded. We've had plenty of discussion. I see no more lights, so let's vote on that motion, and then we'll take up these other issues. And it passes 5-0. Congratulations, you have your first initiative passed as a board member. Now, I'm open to a motion on the other issue that we discussed.
If I might just say
Yes.
one thing, I'm thinking on my feet, and sometimes that's not the best thing for me to do. But if we could identify 7, that would be helpful, I think, because we could tell those 7, look, you're in, you're going to go forward, we'll do the background work. In the meantime, we can go back out, we can look for more diversity. We might add 2 or 3 candidates, but we could come back in January with at least the 7 fully vetted, and probably the other 2 or 3. But that's up to you.
So let me, if I may.
Yeah.
If I'm the second ranked candidate, I drop out. And these are all public records. So essentially, if we rank 7, we are maybe culling the list before we necessarily want to, unless we want to go through the whole process. I'm concerned about unintended consequences by doing this.
Lois,
Yeah.
can I say one thing? I don't think we're gonna rank them today. I think we're gonna say 7. Let's pick 7. And whichever, or you can pick 10, and whichever top 7 get in. So we're not gonna tell any numbers.
It's a public record.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
You know, that's the problem. I don't disagree with doing the 7, but since it's a public record, they're going to know exactly where the votes were and how many. And that's without fully discussing each one, which may change some minds. I think for the process to have integrity,
That's
we
true.
ought to do it all at once. Dr. Walker?
I think that conversation about them and discussion of their so forth should come after we select, say, 7, and be limited to those 7. So I think I'm agreeing with Ms. Campbell that we should step forward and go forward with this.
Well, now that Lois says that, I think what she's saying is, when we tally these sheets, that's gonna be public record. And so if, you know, one guy got 5 votes, and
Right.
the next guy got 4, the guy that got 4 may back out, and I would hate to see that. What do you think, Colin? I'm happy to to say I want 7 to stay. And I know this board, we're probably all gonna pick close to the same 7, knowing us, but
But it's just a matter of seeing those votes written down is my concern. Dr. Walker, you recognize. By the way, we don't have a motion on the table, so if any,
Yes.
go ahead and do a
I'm gonna
free-for-all,
make
but then
one.
you're going to do it.
Yes, I make a motion that we proceed with selecting a smaller number from this list of 15 at today. It could be a number, that not a set number as we go into this, but as we see how the votes go of all 5 of us, then we could, it might be 5, it might be 6, it might be 7, it might be 10. But I make that motion.
Okay, would you restate your motion, please?
The motion is that we, at this meeting, provide our votes concerning these candidates before us, and that we, for the purposes of identifying those who are most highly ranked and so that Mr. Banziger can let others know that they are not highly ranked, and let the ones who are highly ranked know that, hey, there's still hope. I mean, there's hope. So hang on. That's a motion with a little
Is there a second?
argument.
The motion dies for lack of a second. Any other motions to come before us? If not, then we will proceed with the 1 month. Ms. Campbell?
do you feel, Mr. Basinger, that we will lose a lot of these?
I do not.
Okay.
I mean, we may lose 1 or 2, but
You know.
I think, no, I really don't think we will.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess we'll be seeing you again.
I guess so, unless maybe I can appear by phone at the next meeting, but we'll figure something out.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to see you all.
And I guess we just keep these books and we will have them amended. Mr. Perkins?
You know, Mr. Basinger it's been a very lengthy process, and I'm sure it's been expensive for him and a lot more work than he anticipated. I don't know if we cover his airfare back and forth for these, but it might be something to consider if he's, making triple the trips that we anticipated.
Mr. Benzinger?
Well, that would be lovely, because it is factored into our fee as a lump sum fixed price. So yes, that would be nice, but it's by the same token, our guarantee is that we'll work as hard as we need to and as long as we need to without any additional compensation. So it's, as I said, it would be nice, but it's not necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Benzinger. Ms. Campbell?
I'm going to make a motion that we cover Mr. Basinger's airfare if he comes back for a third time, just because the first and second, I understand because that candidate backed out, but this time I believe he came fully thinking that we would narrow down and,
Dr. Alexander?
I'd second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Please vote. And it passes unanimously. Well, not the outcome any of us expected coming in today, but I think it was a good discussion, and it's a good direction. Thank you so much, and did you
Well,
wish
thank you again for the direction, and I'll start calling candidates and reassuring them that they're not out of the process.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, the next item, where are we, is the proposed revision of the ECUA Act of 2001 related to A, board member vacancy, and B, executive director qualification. When we put this on the agenda, our circumstances were very different. We didn't have our vacancy filled, so there's a bit less urgency to do this, although it's something that needs to be done. Let me recognize our attorney, Mr. Beasley, on this issue before we take it up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, as indicated at the prior meeting, I was tasked with reviewing the Act, Section 4, as it relates to vacancies, particularly in light of the issue with the new governor not or delaying appointment. Obviously, with the appointment of Dr. Alexander, almost immediately thereafter, that immediate crisis and problem that the ECUA was suffering under has been cured. Having said that, my statutory review and memorandum and cover to it indicates to you that part of my review was a review of almost every other district like this one, and found that we are the only district that relies completely on a governor appointment for this vacancy. There are methods to accommodate the vacancy that do not rely on the governor appointment. I then prepared an amended statute for your consideration, which was kind of a hybrid. Lest we insult the governor's office by deleting his impact and right to appoint, it was a scenario where if there was a delay in that appointment after a period of time, then the board had a procedure, and I used that procedure as basically taken from other institutions. While doing that review, I was also faced with the executive director issue and interim director issue, which caused me to have that part of the statute open pretty regularly, and it bothered me that the statute, the enactment legislation had, that director's qualification should be those capable of managing a sewage and water plant by the city of Pensacola as of 1981. I thought that we might have grown a bit since then, and I went ahead and tossed in that amendment thinking that the board would think that that was a good idea, although I was not charged with doing so. So I made the one change as requested. I made the second change because it was just glaring. However, at the same meeting, I was tasked with a revision of the ECUA code. In doing so, we have gone back through every resolution. We've received a copy of our current code, went back through every resolution to determine if those resolutions had been incorporated in the code. Sometimes they were, sometimes they were not. We have made quite a few changes to the code. We have sent the code out to each department head who deals with their section and asked them for input and advice on, one, are you still doing it this way? If not, how are you doing it, and do you have any suggestions as to change? That process has, one, taken more time, I had reported that I would not be able to get that to this board meeting. We had a full board meeting anyway. I've asked for permission to let that go to January. The code needs some substantial reworking. Also, though, in concluding my talk on this issue is, while doing the code, I recognize that some of the changes in the code backed up into the act, because the act requires some of the functionality of the code that we're now seeking to change. Thereby, if we're going to change the code to match what we're currently doing, because what we're currently doing is the better answer or the better version of what we need to be doing, we may very well have to change the act. So they kind of go together. And as such, I would suggest that this board give me more time to reconcile the code and the act and come with both a full set of changes for both.
Mr. Perkins?
He laid out exactly what I was going to propose, and the reason is that, revisions to the act and to the code are very, very big, comprehensive, long-lasting revisions, and we have a new board member, and I don't think this unique situation with the appointment will ever happen again, but it may, and a lot of times bad legislation is made by a quick reaction to something, and that's how we end up with legislation that's cumbersome. In addition, you have the chairperson under this scenario appointing or recommending 2 people, and with our current chairperson, I'd be extremely comfortable with that. But these changes are going to outlive us as board members, and you may have a chairperson who wanted to appoint his cousin Bubba or a close political ally and would sway. Or what if it was the chairperson that were being replaced? I mean, so there's a lot, and just like our attorney said, that code is impacted by the legislation. They have to match. And so what I think the thing to do would be is to take a nice, long, comprehensive approach, let the attorney do everything he needs to do, that the changes that the staff feels are necessary, that the attorney feels are necessary, but also that our citizen advisory committee members be given a chance to look this over and provide any input, and us as board members provide any input to do. Anytime you do a bylaw revision, which basically is, it has a lot of lasting impacts. So I think we ought to do it very carefully, very skillfully, and it be a real service to the future of the board. So I support the attorney's thing, and I would recommend that we refer it to committee, to the CAC, and I'm not putting a 1-month time frame on it either. That when the attorney feels comfortable that it's ready to proceed, the staff's comfortable, then the committee gets it and they look at it. But the basic motion would be to refer to committee.
Would you like to make it a motion to table until such time as it's taken off
Yeah,
the table?
we'll do that. Motion to table.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Campbell? And even though this is not debatable, your light has been on, so I will recognize it.
Yeah, not debatable, but I do agree with Mr. Perkins that, in this scenario right here, I respectfully thank the governor for what I feel like was an excellent appointment. And I did have, although I shared his concerns, I'm fine with the chair now, narrowing that down to 2 people for us to vote on, but you're right, I don't know how I'd feel about, if I was in the seat or you were, someone else was in the seat. So, I do think that something like this needs time, and I really appreciate Robert looking over all of the code, and just the one thing that you found that was referring back to 1981, there may be a lot of other things that need to be changed. So, and I do appreciate you, Dale, saying that it should go through the CAC. I think that's very important.
And now that Robert has been breached, Dr. Walker?
So the proposal is to table
The code revisions.
The code revisions suggested by the attorney, and we will take them up in the CAC.
That's correct.
All right, fine.
Any further discussion? Mr. Perkins? Your light's still on, okay. Okay, please vote, and it's the motion to table. Can't ever tell if this thing's, and it passes 5-0.
The other thing I forgot to mention on that, and I hope we don't forget about this, but I'm hoping that our lobbying efforts for the Brownsville infrastructure are still going forward, and I was nervous that this, if it went forward, might impact that, but we are still pursuing that, right? Okay, thanks.
Yes. Ms. Campbell?
I think there's been talk about changing the plan for the road, but we are still going through with that, as far as I know.
Yeah. Okay, the next item is the, item 10B, purchase of aeration gearbox assembly, Bayou Marcus Water Reclamation Facility, and that's on on page 30. This is a recommendation that the board waive the formal bid requirement due to the critical nature of this gearbox assembly and the immediate need to procure spare, and approve the issuance of a purchase order to Applied Industrial Technologies in the total amount of $80,695.67 with funding from the operating budget line item. Ms. Campbell,
I'd like to move staff recommendation.
there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Please vote. And it passes 5-0. Item 10C is change order number 1, Cantonment Trunk Force Main. The recommendation is that the board authorize the executive director to approve a change order to the contract with Utility Service Company, Inc. in the amount of $123,274.28 for the installation of a 12-inch force main via jack and bore and other miscellaneous items for the Cantonment Trunk Force Main project with funding through CIP Project CS 129. Is there a motion?
I so move.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion, questions, Ms. Campbell?
I just would like for our new board member, Dr. Alexander, to know that we don't see a lot of change orders here at the ECUA, but most are like this one that, you know, the work was not included in the original bid, so. Thank you. You're welcome.
Item 10D. Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to vote on that. We're moving things right along here. Sorry, please vote. And it passes 5-0. 10D, this is a basic contract extension. The recommendation is that we waive normal competitive bidding process due to the sole source availability of these services, and this has to do with our sludge removal. Do you want to add anything to this, Mr. Johnson?
No, ma'am, I think you pretty much had it. Basically, we use our biosolids for, with our dryer to make fertilizer. We use other biosolids for our composting, and this is an alternative disposal. If we don't have this contractor, who is essentially the only one that does this kind of work, we got to haul to the landfill, and it's about 3 times the cost of paying these folks to haul it away. So.
Is there a motion? Dr. Walker?
Yes, I move approval of the motion.
It's been moved. Ms. Campbell?
Second.
Further discussion, Ms. Campbell? Dr. Walker?
Is this really the only option we have for disposing of the wet sludge, cake sludge? There are
Mr.
no other
Johnson?
companies around?
That's
Mr.
my
Johnson?
understanding, yes.
And are we in danger, is there much danger that you see of us losing this customer?
Mr. Johnson?
Not that I'm aware of. I think we've had a relationship ongoing for
Several
a few
years,
years now, and there's no indication that they won't continue to provide service.
I think they've been buying our sludge, wet sludge, for as long as we've had the central WRF. Does that sound more or less right?
Don, do you know?
Mr. Palmer, you're recognized.
Green South has had the contract for the last 3 years for the heat-dried biosolids. Prior to that, we had another company out of Arkansas that was into specialty fertilizers that bought all of our heat-dried biosolids, our fertilizer. As far as Class B, Green South is the only company that has handled our Class B sludge, and that's what this contract is for. They are also have our heat-dried biosolids now, so they have both contracts.
Madam Chairman, does Green South pay us something for what they're getting, for the sludge?
Mr. Palmer, you may respond.
Yes. For the heat-dried biosolids, yes, they pay us, I believe it's $2 a ton. It's a nominal fee, but they are required to come and get it and remove it. It's an avoidance cost. If they don't get it, we have to haul it somewhere, and that's a landfill, and that's a very expensive cost to the tune of about $90 a ton. And so unless we find other buyers or some other source, and right now we have an exclusive contract with them for the heat-dried biosolids for them to take it. As far as the Class B biosolids go, they're the only ones in Northwest Florida. They handle all the other utilities around here. And so that's why we say that they're the only ones. There's nobody else in this area that takes the cake or the Class B, which is 16, 17% solids, if that makes any sense.
Madam Chairman, is there, do we have a expectation that we will enlarge the composting operation further and therefore use more sludge in it? Or is it pretty much maxed out?
At this point, it's pretty much maxed out. It is somewhat weather dependent. If it gets real wet, they can't form the rows and turn the rows is weather dependent. So there is some weather restrictions. This Class B contract is our last resort. As noted here, we'd much rather use it in compost or heat-dried the heat-dried. The problem with the heat-dried, those dryers can have maintenance issues, and that maintenance issue may be recent one was a new gear that took like 6 months to get because nobody else in the country makes one that big, is my understanding. So sometimes a dryer can take a long time to repair, so we have to have other options.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. And Madam Chairman, I'd just say we need to realize that we are very dependent on this one company staying with us and taking this off our hands, because otherwise, yeah, we would have to do some budget revisions, and not the kind that we like to make.
Right. Thank you for raising those issues, Dr. Walker. Ms. Campbell, you're like one. Mr. Johnson, do you have any idea what the impact on, what the tipping fees would amount to if we did not have this contractor?
Well, the ratio I got was about triple the cost to landfill for this versus the cost that we pay Green South to haul. So,
Mr. Palmer, you wanted to add?
Madam Chairman, that's correct. It's about $35 we pay them for the Class B. They come, they haul it away. Generally, it goes to Alabama. For the landfill, I believe it's $92 or $93. So it's almost triple
what's
the cost.
Aggregate cost, though?
If we had to haul all our sludge to the landfill, first of all, the landfill will only take so many loads a day. And, you know, when we were back at Main Street, the history there is we had spent close to $1 million 1 year hauling sludge to the landfill.
Yeah, I just wanted it in context. So thank you very much. That was helpful. Have we voted on this item? Okay, please vote. And it passes 5-0. And we come to item 10E, extension of annual contract. This is for Vaqua Water Technologies for the purchase of ALK Aquit, which is trademark, and Bioxide, which is also a trademark, plus 71, for $1.65 and $3.90 per gallon respectively, with funding from the appropriate line items. This is a simple contract extension. Ms. Campbell?
I'd like to move staff recommendation.
Oh,
Second.
sorry, Mr. Perkins, I jumped. Any further discussion? Please vote. And And it passes 5-0. Item 10F is a sewer cost participation agreement, 9 Mile Road, Lift Station 387 Sewer Basin. Does Mr. Hayden want to handle this, or Mr. Johnson?
I can answer your questions.
Okay.
Basically, there's a lot of growth in the area between 9 Mile and Detroit Boulevard, Pine Forest Road area. It has begun to reach the capacity of our existing collection system, sewage collection system in the area. We have planned improvements for the area, but they're the timing versus the desire for some of the developers out there to proceed with their projects is not in line. Stacy, I believe, made a presentation to the committee last month and met with these developers, with Mr. Beasley, and basically to come up with an approach to allow these developments to proceed by cost contributing to these improvements that we are planning for anyway. A contractual form was constructed, and a cost was developed of $2.50 a gallon for that future capacity in the system. And what we're asking is for these developers to sign these contracts and pay those costs up front, at which time we will allow them to proceed with the construction of the project with an anticipation that we will have our facilities under construction and in place by the time that flow actually gets here. So this is the item that we submitted the revision on. The only thing was, of the approximately 12 or so contracts that we had, 12 or 13?
9, actually.
9, okay. 2 of them were for amounts over $50,000. And we had originally written it where we would bring those to the board. That really just delays those developments by the time it takes to bring it to the next board meeting, and these folks are ready to go. So we saw no reason, since this is really not a cost to ECUA, to basically ask the board for permission to approve those contracts as well. So this is basically to allow us to proceed with all of the contracts for that area.
Thank you. And Ms. Campbell, can we get a motion to get it on the board, and then we'll take
Yep.
questions too?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the agreements.
Okay, is there a second?
I second it.
Any discussion or questions on this, Ms. Campbell?
I'd like to thank Stacy and our board attorney for getting out in front of this and working with these developers. I know we wanted to get them all on one contract, but that wasn't, we weren't able to do that, right?
Right, that's correct. Madam Chairman, yes, ma'am, we did try to get them all on one contract. It just kind of fell apart, and so we had to go with individual contracts to get it to move forward.
If I might, yeah, that's usually hard, so I'm not surprised. But I thank you. How many do we have that out of the 9 that are?
As of today, 2 signed today, so now we have a total of 5 that have signed the agreement and are ready to go. So we got 4 more that we're waiting on. But again, we're not going to wait on them. We can move forward with the 5 that we have and get them
Working.
building their projects.
Thank you. I know we need some affordable homes in the area, so I appreciate all your hard work.
Dr. Walker, did we get a second on that one? We did we not? Okay. Dr. Walker, you're recognized.
Does the fact that only 5 have signed so far, does that increase what they have to pay in order to make the entire amount?
The way it was structured is a set dollar amount per gallon that they plan to use.
Okay.
In other words, and we calculated that based on $2.50 per gallon that they have anticipated using. So it gets very complicated if we look at it from a stance that if some drop out, then we have to redo the agreements. And we said, okay, there are so many developers that are wanting to sign now And we have quite a few more that we know are coming down the line, and we have accounted for those within this calculation to provide for some additional capacity, if you will, in the agreement. That sounds kind of silly, but we wanted to be able to offer some other developers an opportunity to participate as well so they can get moving too. So we kept it at $2.50 per gallon of capacity, and that won't change.
So unless some of the developers who've already signed on decide to ask for more capacity, then
Correct.
the dollar amounts are fixed.
Correct. We have been going back and forth with a lot of the developers. Some of them have changed their flow rates, and we have analyzed those to make sure that are they reasonable. We do believe that they are, and have accommodated where we could and held our stand where we had to.
Have some of the 9 developers involved sued us regarding the lack of capacity?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
How many?
Did you restate your question, sir? I'm sorry.
How
maybe I'm
many of these 9 developers have sued us regarding the lack of capacity?
Oh, I'm sorry. There was one that was about to file a claim. I think they withdrew that statement. But right now, none are, as I understand it, have filed suit against ECUA. Refer to
Yeah,
Mr. Beasley on that
Mr.
question.
Mr. Johnson, if you don't mind, if I'll recognize Mr. Beasley, his light's on. You might respond to that and what else you want to.
Two components that I wanted to add to this. First is to address Dr. Walker's first. One of the developers had a reservation letter that they were suggesting gave them claim and rights. I would say that none of them sued, none of them made an actual claim. I would say that the interesting thing about this process is that it wasn't reactive to a threat. It was actually proactive to a problem, and that Mr. Hayden and his department affirmatively addressed the problem, got out ahead of it, and the meeting started a little, the original meeting started a little in that defensive posture, but very quickly went to an affirmative, thank you for helping us out of this problem. Thank you for being proactive and aggressive to solve this dilemma. And so it did not start with a defensive posture on our part, being we thought we were getting sued, but it very quickly went to almost a teamwork session, which it became. The second thing I wanted to add was, with respect to getting everyone on board, that is essentially the essence of this amendment. If you look at the total volume and calculations being done, there are two big players and then a bunch of small players. Everyone has agreed in concept to it. Getting everyone to sign up at the same time was very logistically difficult. But with the motion as amended being passed, we have the 2 big ones on board.
If it is passed.
If it is passed, then the 2 they've all accepted the form of the agreement. One is actually signed, I believe.
Yeah.
So with that, we would have the 2 big ones signed up, and at that point, the capacity and the allocation of the dollars and cents makes sense for the ECUA to proceed, regardless if one of the smaller ones changes plans or falls off. So I hope that helps with your question.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, thank you, Mr. Beasley.
I guess I would just add that really there are still choices for these developers. This is a method to allow some short-term improvements that will coincide with allowing them to move ahead. ECUA has its own long-term improvements in the area, and if they choose not to participate, they're just going to have to wait long-term. So they have choices still.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Campbell?
I'm just going to again say, Stacy, thank you so much for, I know this has not been an easy process to go through, and I appreciate you and I appreciate Robert getting out there and making this turn into a really good thing for the developers and ECUA.
Yeah, and I want to echo that, Ms. Campbell. Some developers came to me saying, this is just outrageous, and we have this, we should have this. Why is this so difficult? And what happened was Mr. Hayden and Mr. Beasley got together with them and worked out something that was good for the developers, good for the utility, good for the future of this community, which is the way we ought to be doing business. And I see that happening more and more, not this obstructionist, but more of, we're in this together. So anyway, thank you. Dr. Walker?
Yes, one last question. Is lift station 387 the Detroit Boulevard lift station, or is it some other?
Mr. Hayden?
Lift station 387 is not the Detroit lift station. It is just to the northeast of that location, but it does, we will be abandoning that lift station eventually, and that flow would then go to lift station 50, which is the Detroit Boulevard lift station.
Okay, I know we've discussed the Detroit Boulevard lift station many times, and I thought it was the center of quite a bit of discussion, and
Yes,
but
sir.
it's going to be there, and it's going to be upgraded or something eventually.
Yes, sir. We have plans now. We have a permit issue that we're working through before we can go out to bid, but yes, we are moving forward with that as quick as we can.
All
Yes,
right,
sir.
thank you.
Mr. Perkins?
I applaud and support this conceptually, but I got a little bit of a problem with the way the wording is on the revised amendment. And the reason is to me, it basically gives the executive director a blank check, you know, to write with these developers, and I am more in favor of limiting it to $50,000. And if we do more than that, then I think it should, you know, pass the scrutiny of the board and the public, you know, when we're making that big an expenditure. Now, I realize that time is of the essence, and I'd be willing to meet, you know, prior, a couple of weeks from now if we need to approve it, or if the other two are already on board, if we could have a motion by the end of the meeting, you know, go ahead and approve the original recommendation, but have a motion by the end of the meeting specifically for those two in a set amount, then the board could go ahead and approve it. I'd be comfortable with that. But I don't like just leaving it open-ended, anything over 50,000. Are we talking 200,000 or 200 million, you know? I mean, so I would be more comfortable with the original recommendation, and if we could take action later in the meeting, if there's language that we could do, or if we, you know, have a special meeting in a couple of weeks from now, I'd be open to that. But I don't like having a kind of a blank check. And really, the bigger thing for me is no public scrutiny, you know, for a larger expenditure. I mean, it would be reported to us, and there would be scrutiny, but it would be after the fact, you know, so.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Mr. Beasley?
Yes, and Mr. Perkins brings up a point that we struggled with when we were doing the amendment. First of all, it's not an expenditure, it's actually we're receiving these funds, which doesn't make much of a difference because it still needs to be disclosed. When I wrestled with this in the code, another code revision comment, the executive director has authority up to 50,000 for purchases. And then we struggled with, this isn't a purchase, this is actually an agreement whereby ECUA is receiving money in excess of 50,000. Having said that, we do have the identities, we have the exact amounts for those two that are in excess of 50. It would not be a problem to do an amended motion.
Can I raise a
We
point
can
of
get it together.
information?
Sure.
I'd like to just ask Mr. Beasley this. What if on our recommendation, on that final line of the recommendation, authorize the executive director to approve these agreements, including those where ECUA's cost exceed 50,000? Would that solve the problem, since it's not ECUA's cost?
You might restate that, Dale. I
So
don't
on
think
that,
you
on
said what you
our,
meant
on
to
our
say.
revised recommendation,
Yeah.
and since it's not actually our cost,
Right.
where we put, you know, the second line from the bottom, with individual developers, and authorize the executive director to approve these agreements, including those, and then we'd insert where ECUA's cost exceed $50,000. Would that satisfy it?
I
or-
don't think you want it to be ECUA's costs.
No, but that's when he'd have carte blanche authority. I don't know, maybe I'm trying to be a lawyer here. and
So I think your first suggestion actually probably works
better,
better,
okay.
and we
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
accommodate it. So what we could do is very quickly, we could amend this to identify the two contracts under the cost-sharing agreement in which the amount of the contributing party is paying to ECUA an amount in excess of $50,000. The total amount is about 300 grand.
Correct.
And two of those consumers will pay a greater share than the others, and those two consumers will pay greater than 50,000 to the ECUA, in which case those represent essentially the bulk of the 300 grand. And so I think what we could do instead of including those exceeding 50,000, we could identify those specifically right there and ask that you give specific authority to sign those agreements. And I could do that pretty quickly. We have the chart. We started to do it and decided not to, and it would be easy to do. So if you'll give me a few minutes, I can
Would
do
you
that.
like to table this until he gets back with us with language for the amendment? Is that acceptable for you, Ms. Campbell?
So
Motion
we're
to
still-
table.
Yeah,
Motion-
okay,
And we'll come
gotcha.
back to it. Motion to table, is there a second? Ms. Campbell, you second it?
Yeah,
Okay, motion to table, and it's going to come back to us. Please vote.
it's gonna come back today though, right?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I just didn't wanna hold them up
Oh,
anymore.
no. And it passes 5-0, and you'll alert us when you have that.
Thank you.
Okay, item 5G is, the subject is the CNG fueling facilities request for proposals, and the recommendation is that we reject the proposal and authorize staff to modify the RFP with the intention of establishing an alternate and more cost-effective method of constructing and maintaining the 2 new CNG fueling stations. Ms. Campbell?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, is there a motion for the staff recommendation? Mr. Perkins,
I move the recommendation.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on this item? Ms. Campbell? Okay, please vote. And we're just rejecting the proposals and redoing it. And it passes 5-0. Item 10H is proposed encroachment agreement, ECUA property in the Star Lake subdivision. We've seen this in some board reports. Mr. Johnson, would you like to sort of outline briefly what this situation was?
Yes, ma'am. ECUA receives a parcel from, of railroad right-of-way, essentially discontinued right-of-way through the Star Lake subdivision. We have a gravity main that goes down the center. It's a 60-foot wide parcel. There is a property residence that is adjacent where part of their building encroaches into that easement. They are basically having trouble with their title insurance on their house because of encroachment, and have asked to clear that up by having us approving an encroachment agreement. 60-foot wide easement, our line's in the center. We have plenty of room to do the maintenance that we need to do. The encroachment really doesn't affect us in any material way, so we see no reason not to go ahead and grant this encroachment agreement.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Ms. Campbell?
I'd like to move staff recommendation, and I have some comments.
Sure. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Campbell?
I should have said I wholeheartedly want to move this recommendation.
Yeah.
Again, I'm gonna thank Mr. Beasley. This, was something that I was hoping would have happened several months ago. You know, we, as a utility, we really need to work for the citizens that we represent. And in this scenario, this easement, all those encroachments were there when we bought the easement. So for us to go back and say that something had to be moved, and not just do a hold harmless, you know, was ridiculous to me. And I'm very, very happy to see this go and let this gentleman sell his house. He's been trying for a long time. The good news is, you know, home prices have gone up in the last year, so hopefully he didn't lose his sale, and maybe he'll make a little more.
Well, and I think they actually did, but yes,
Okay.
this was one that,
Yeah.
it's us being user-friendly
Right.
instead of creating obstacles. And-
Good neighbors.
Yeah, yeah. Do we have a motion on this? We do, yes. Please vote. And it passes 5-0. Do I sense that there's language, have you worked out the language, Mr. Beasley? Or, okay. Then let's have a motion to remove from the table item 10F. Mr. Perkins?
We remove item 10F from the table.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Please vote. And it passes 5-0.
I'm going to ask Mr. Beasley to read the revised language, because his handwriting is like a doctor's, you know. And I do want to say, probably as Mr. Beasley's initially loudest skeptic, I've been real pleased with his performance as our attorney.
Thank you, sir. The
You're
current
recognized.
recommendation as amended will read that the board approve the cost participation approach for the LS number 387 sewer basin at a rate of $2.50 per gallon of increased system capacity, comma, with developer participation cost captured in a sewer cost participation agreement with individual developers, comma, and also authorize the executive director to approve these agreements, comma, including the agreement with NNGS LLC for the amount of $92,250 and Cali Semino in the amount of $98,250, period.
Move the revised recommendation.
$98,250.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Walker. Any further discussion on this?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just for further discussion, if any of the board members are interested and would like to, I have the chart of all of the contribution amounts here with those names attached and circled to those amounts, if you want to review them at some point to see how they relate to the total amount. As I indicated, the total amount on the chart is $262,500. The two that are specifically being identified, as you see, are $92,250 and $98,250, representing the bulk of this participation.
Can we get a copy of that?
Can we get a
Not-
copy?
We don't have to have it right now. but-
Sure, sure, if you'll just email that to the board members subsequent to this meeting. Mr. Perkins, thank you for bringing that up. That's important. This would not have affected our ratepayers, but there are times when we don't want to be loosey-goosey about things like that, and that was a good catch. Ms. Campbell? Okay, we're ready to vote on this recommendation. Item 10F. And it passes 5-0. Item 10I, Beach Haven Northeast Drainage and Sanitary Sewer Project Phase 2, Budget Amendment and Conceptual Approval of Interlocal Cost Sharing Agreement. And essentially, we're giving conceptual approval right now on the next phase of Beach Haven sewer expansion because we're partnering with the county as they do stormwater, and there's some grants involved. Is there a motion? Ms. Campbell?
Move staff recommendation.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Dr. Walker?
I have to say, it's a good deal when we have an estimate of $4 million of sewer work, and we only have to pay $1.7 million for it. We should take that kind of deal any time, I think.
And
I-
we get sewer
I would-
expansion. Yes.
I would like to applaud the county commission. You know, we've had a real good cooperative relationship with them over the past few years, and that's been beneficial to all our ratepayers.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, if there's no further discussion, please vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Walker?
Yes, I do have a question.
Sure.
Can anyone give us an estimate of the total cost of the Beach Haven overall sewer expansion program?
Mr. Hayden, do you want to, Mr. Johnson?
Well, this is called Phase 2. If you look at the entire Beach Haven area, north and south of Gulf Beach Highway from basically Navy Point out to Pleasant Grove, it's tens of millions of dollars, and probably decades. It's going to be slow going, but we can only do what we can with the funds, and when we have an opportunity like was talked about to work with the county and use grant funds to kind of get double the bang for our buck, we have to take advantage. But it will be a long, long time before we're able to address all of Beach Haven.
Dr. Walker? Okay. Ms. Campbell?
It's just nice though, because this area is on the waterway, and that's so important to this county, to get septic tanks off of waterways. So
And-
I look forward to the time we get all the way around to Perdido Bay.
Well, and the people in these communities have been pushing for this for decades. They are so appreciative of these efforts and want to do whatever they can to help advocate for it. And they put up with some disruption in their lives during the process. And Mr. Hayden's been great to work with these citizens groups as they come in and want to know when, how soon, and I think they appreciate his candor with them. Anyway, no other lights are on. Let's vote on this conceptual approval. And it passes 5-0. Item 10J is budget amendment fiscal year 2020 related to project encumbrances, a corrected schedule. This came before us last month, and there are a couple of amendments. Do you want to handle it, Mr. Johnson, or Ms. Sheldon, do you want to?
I think I can. It's,
Okay.
again, this was just basically a kind of a cleanup that was brought to the board last month. There were 2 line items that were just omitted, and this is just to make sure that they are included within this. This was to for project encumbrances and bringing them forward. They are shown on page 71, outlined for roughly about $6 million there. So.
Do we need action on this? Yes, that we approve the attached revised budget amendment. Is there a motion? Mr.
Move
Ferguson?
approval. It's not actually spending the money, it's just an accounting
Yes,
item.
right. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Please vote. And it passes 5-0. Item 10K is a proposed easement adjacent to the Gillimard Emergency Storage Tank Site. As you recall, we rejected an item at a recent meeting regarding this layout of this plot and decided to go back for bids. Do you want to explain this item, Mr. Beasley?
Certainly. These parcels were identified as extra property to be disposed of by public sale following the completion of the Gillimard Tank project. Originally, the project had various alternatives in construction, and as those alternatives were vetted out and agreed upon, it became a reality that the Palafox parcel, the old hospital, was not needed. It was sold off. The parcels behind it were retained until such time as the project was completed. Project was completed. We bid those excess property out for public bid. The results were lackluster, and this board determined that the publication and bidding them separately and such, and a couple different concerns, gave an opportunity to cancel the bids at the time and put the property out for resale. During the process of looking at the property to analyze the putting it back out for resale, it was observed that one of the issues is that when we drew the line, we drew it through the rear of the structure of the parcel that we sold, which was the hospital parcel. Not only the rear of the structure actually going through a part of the physical building, but more importantly for that property owner, it cut off the loading dock. And this property being an old hospital, the rear loading dock actually goes into the basement where there's a power generation facility. And so without access to that rear loading dock, without access to its basement, it deprives that parcel owner of the hospital parcel from any use of the back of that hospital facility. And this is a large structure with a large point of access. So what we did was we have taken the opportunity to fix this issue and keep ECUA out of what would surely be litigation over access, and put an easement in place. The easement is the bare necessity needed for the property owner, which is the hospital property owner, to continue to be able to access that parcel in the rear up the driveway of the Gillimard tank driveway, and then across that little piece across the front of the building on that parcel. That building that you see on the parcel we're hoping to sell off is the old X-ray building. It's a concrete fortress. The little piece of access that runs east-west across the front goes from the driveway to the parking lot. That's not shown on there, but there's a parking lot there. So that's why you have that one leg of access. And then, of course, you see the easement accessing and giving utility to the loading dock and such. This easement will overlay now, if approved, and then the parcel are now combined, will be sitting back out for bidding. We don't have control over who buys the parcel at public auction. However, whoever it is, their rights will be subject to the access of the hospital parcel to access their loading dock. So we kind of fixed the issue that we created, and now we're ready to sell it back out again if this goes through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Is there a motion, Ms. Campbell?
I'd like to make a motion to follow staff recommendation and have some comments.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Campbell?
Yep, again, I want to thank Robert for his leadership on this. I think it started out as a little survey issue, and appreciate you taking care of it. I also would be remiss if I didn't thank Mr. Tim Pyle. I believe he got involved because he worked for the elevator company, and he no longer even works there, but he felt bad for this gentleman because he had trouble communicating, so he came, I think everyone might remember, and communicated for the gentleman what the issues were. And that's just a nice thing for a citizen to do, and again, we're playing good neighbor here, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Robert.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins?
I hate to be contrary today, but and part of this makes sense for me, but part of it maybe I just don't understand. So, you know, we're prohibited from giving away services to charities or anything like that, but it looks like we're going to give away property to a corporate entity here, which is okay with me if there's a benefit to us and our ratepayers. If not, I think we should charge a nominal fee because we, you know, clear this section here where the hospital is, if you're looking on page 74, where the line was drawn where that building is, that little part on that corner, I have no problem granting them that easement. This easement going across these two properties, the long one, you know, going, I guess, from north to south, potentially could impact the value of either of those properties if it's just for the hospital. But what I'm wondering, does ECUA have a lasting right to that easement so we can access from there as well?
Mr. Beasley?
Yeah, that's a good question, and one I struggled with too. So and it's going to be hard to describe without looking at it, but the darker long parcel that's being described is actually retained by the ECUA. We will continue to own that property even after we sell off the extra property. And so, unfortunately, we need that driveway. And so we were, from the start, selling two parcels divided by our driveway, which is less than optimal, but it's leftover property. So what we've done is the first easement that's at issue, which is the long one, is over the top of our existing driveway, which would not be sold. We currently own all of it. So what we've done is we've placed an easement over our driveway and then an easement over that leg that services the back of the building. Now the only one, and certainly those are almost necessary, the only one that's kind of extra, so to speak, or to the benefit of this property owner is the one across the front on the Avery Street side, which goes from the driveway to the parking lot. That one was put in there for access because you can't get around the big concrete building. But I hope that explains it. I don't know that that helps your analysis.
Well, it does, and it makes it, more palatable, but, so that one little leg does have the potential to impact the value of that property, although probably not by much. I think we would better serve our constituents by asking for a nominal fee for that easement, whether it's $500, $1,000, I don't know. It depends on what the board members feel. But I don't think we should just give that away. Even though it was our mistake on the other section, we're giving that other section away, and we're giving them access to that other section. But that one little section there, I just don't, maybe I can be talked out of it, but I just don't see how that benefits our ratepayers.
Mr. Perkins, are you talking about the horizontal line that's mostly white with the diagonal grids? Which one are you talking about?
The little short section that goes from east to west at the top, the
Right.
smallest of the three.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
That goes from our easement up to his property on the front, on the Avery Street side, that runs parallel with Avery
Okay,
Street.
yeah, I'm with you, okay. Just,
And if I,
let me recognize Ms. Campbell, and
Well, my only thoughts, and Robert can answer if I'm correct, but I believe the only way to really tell what that would be worth would be some kind of diminution of value appraisal, and I don't know if it's even worth what it would cost us to do that type of appraisal. I mean, just for that little slither. I agree with Mr. Perkins on the other two. We messed up. So I see what you're talking about, the little teeny slither, but I'll let Mr. Beasley tell me if I'm right or wrong about that.
Mr. Beasley?
I actually would agree with both of you. The sliver, as we're calling it now, which is the access east-west parallel to Avery Street in front of the building, quite frankly, the property owner of the hospital got involved in this process once they realized that we were willing to correct this error, that we basically made this problem, and that I guess was thrown into the mix, so to speak. I think it is extra, so I agree with Mr. Perkins on that. I think it is not necessary to correct what I'm calling our surveying error to start with in the subdivision of the parcels. It is certainly to the benefit of that Avery Street parcel, of the hospital parcel. And then I also agree with Ms. Campbell. I don't have any idea how you would value it, and it would definitely be more expensive to pay for a formal survey appraisal to value it. Mr. Perkins' suggestion that you throw a nominal fee on it, and I think maybe possibly the resolution here is a compromise where possibly the first easement, the necessity easement is approved, and then the other one is approved subject to the owner being willing to pay something. If that's what they're interested in doing, that may be, but it certainly would not be worth getting an appraisal on.
So, recalling the checkered history of this whole project and these tanks that were vociferously opposed by the neighborhood, and here we have this building that is of some probably architectural value as an example of mid-century construction. There weren't a lot of bidders on this property, and we faced perhaps demolition, and by this man coming forward and taking this property and trying to rehab it, created a buffer for our tanks. Then we kind of messed up by not allowing him access to his property. So he's had to deal with all of this process in trying to rehab this building. There may be a small amount that we can recoup, but I would kind of look at this as us being good neighbors, and sort of appreciating something that he has done for our ratepayers and the neighborhood, and not, I don't think it's going to accrue that much to us, and I don't think it's worth what it would take to establish a value and extract that value. Ms. Campbell?
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't know my light was still, but since it is on, I'm gonna agree with you, I'm not, I think he's waited long enough for us to correct this problem, and I think we can sell the properties. I don't think it'll diminish the value enough to worry about.
I mean, I appreciate you guarding every cent that those ratepayers pay, and I think they appreciate it. I think this is one that we probably have gotten more in exchange for this than he would.
Yeah, when we look at it in totality, him buying the property and the improvements he's done is probably worth the value of granting the easement we made the mistake on. So I'm okay with the y'all talked me into it.
Okay, well. Any other discussion? Dr. Walker?
I think we have some vested interest in the buyer's success. We'd like to see a nice, pretty, attractive building there instead of a derelict, and it does help to cover up our tank, which may not matter anymore because I think everyone has probably forgotten it. But some had not forgotten it back when Mr. McCorvey was having to hold meetings in that neighborhood, I know. But I think we should just proceed with the plan.
Thank you. Seeing no more lights, please vote. And it passes 5-0. Okay, item 11A, our budget reports. Those are for your information. And we come now, does anyone have any questions regarding these budget reports? If not, let's move to the executive director's report. Mr. Johnson.
Yes. First, at our last meeting, we had a customer at Open Forum, Mrs. Brake, that was basically indicated that it took 98 days, I believe, to deal with some garbage can issues that she had. We went back and looked at the record from her contacts with us, and while it did take 98 days to kind of complete everything, as far as the record shows, our contractor responded relatively within a couple days, pretty much every time that she called. There was an issue of her can was missing. She lived in a neighborhood where there were a lot of cans and people would borrow their neighbors' cans, and she couldn't find hers. We called back and gave her the serial number on the can. She found it, found that the wheels needed fixing. Otto, our contractor, went out there 2 days later. The can was missing. They couldn't fix it because they couldn't find it. It wasn't out at the street. So there was a lot of back and forth of that nature. Eventually, everything got worked out. She did indicate that the can was taken maybe 5 times over that 98-day period. So in general, we understand, her frustration and her problem, but as far as we can tell, our responses were timely and adequate. I'd also want to remind the board that we are bringing that can maintenance and distribution work in-house. Our contract with Otto ends at the end of December, and come January 1st, we will have ECUA employees that will be doing that work. So we will even have better control over that process as we go forward. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. I wanted to inform the board that we have received a notification and offer from Gulf Power for easements across our property, basically up near the Central Water Reclamation Facility. There are some real problems with their easement request that we are looking at very closely at the staff level. It is essentially a demand letter that indicates that they will file a suit against us for eminent domain if we don't accept their offer. We've been talking to Mr. Beasley as well on that, so we are developing our recommendation for response on that. And since that's heading in that direction, there's probably not a lot more that we can say about that at this point in time in an open meeting. So I want to let you know about that. On a bright note, I guess we received all of our settlements on the AENU lawsuit, totaled about $880,000. Everything has been received, and that case is closed. We also received a letter from the State Attorney General saying that we were part of a settlement on a price-fixing scheme relating to liquid aluminum sulfate, and we're have received a check there for $153,597 and some cents on that as well. Kind of found money, but in a good way, so that's very good. Also, just quickly, in the since the last board meeting, I wanted to mention I've had a couple of customer contacts, I guess, that basically compliments on our staff. I had one gentleman to come into my office and basically say how much he appreciated our cashiers here in this building and how he was treated every time he comes in to pay his bill. And we also had, I think Mr. Perkins got a note from a customer who was talking about a sewer blockage, and he contacted our customer service and was very complimentary of their response as well. So we appreciate our staff very much, and they do a good job. That's all for me.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any questions for Mr. Johnson? Dr. Walker?
Several months ago, perhaps a year ago, Mr. Sorrell told me that we were in the process of buying new garbage cans, and that those garbage cans would have a chip. Each can would have a chip embedded in it, which would identify the location that it was supposed to be at, and would notify the driver of the truck picking up that can if the can was at a location other than the one that it was assigned to. Have any of the rest of you heard of anything of that? Okay, well, I was told that by Mr. Sorrell several months ago.
That might be part of the failed beta test we had on
No, I don't think so. But at any rate, Madam Chairman, may we ask Mr.
Yes, please do.
Mr. Johnson if he knows anything about this?
I believe I've heard the same story. Randy is not here today. He's out sick. I'll say that we have 117,000 sanitation customers, so it might take a while before those new cans are distributed. I would assume over a long period of time. So we might have a few thousand out there, but probably nowhere near our customer base.
Madam Chairman, may I suggest to Mr. Johnson and staff that we make sure that that particular lady gets one right away, if indeed we have such intelligent cans. And could Mr. Johnson also check with Mr. Rudd and find out whether in fact there are such cans now in stock?
Could be sort of like implanting in your pet. Yeah. Okay. Ms. Campbell?
I do know in recent conversations with staff, the amount of cans that we order every year barely is keeping up with the growth in this community. I did notice that our reserves are low on sanitation, pretty much depleted, so that's something that we all need to keep in mind moving forward. Beulah is exploding. The Detroit area now is going to be exploding. You know, there's a lot of cans that are in sad shape. My can is in great shape, but my husband babies that can like better than he does his dogs. So, but I do think we need to think about that moving forward, that we might need to double the amount of cans that we purchase every year, because those cans are, some of those cans are really old, so.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell.
I'm not worried about chips, I'm just worried about having cans.
Okay, we come now to the attorney's report. Mr. Beasley?
My only report is to advise, as I have, of our continued update on the code. We, I think I kind of stole my own report earlier when reporting on that. It's ongoing. We've now reached the point where we have taken every resolution since, I think, 1987 or 5, and made sure that those resolutions have been incorporated in the code. Some had not. We're fixing the annotations. We're fixing some of the old language. As example, we're eliminating the male pronouns when it relates to the executive director and other scenarios. We have spreadsheeted all of the positions in the code which no longer exist, and have cross-referenced those to our actual org chart, made a spreadsheet, recommended replacements, and sent those to Mr. Johnson for his review. We have now sent each code section to each department head who works with that section and asked the questions, is this how you're doing it? If not, how are you doing it? And let's talk about a better way, and to get their input. Some of those department heads have sent back their comments at this point. Some have asked me to meet with them because their sections are very technical. I met this morning with one of the sections on backflow preventers and learned a lot about those. So it's ongoing. I think the motion earlier allowed me a little bit of time to get it done and be comprehensive, and so we'll keep working on it.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. With regard to the attorney's report, as you recall, last month we made a motion that was adopted unanimously to see that these files, all files be turned over to Mr. Beasley. I have talked to Mr. Beasley and about perhaps in the next couple of months having an executive session where he brings us up to date with any litigation in which we are engaged. We have not done that in some time, and it would be probably very valuable to do that. But he needs time to absorb all of these files and make sure that that happens. But you can be looking forward to that at some point. Okay, we do not have anything under unfinished business or under new business. Board communications, Ms. Campbell?
For many years that we have entertained the Youth Leap group here at ECUA. And last year we were asked to entertain the Adult Leadership Pensacola. We did so, Mr. Roberts and I went to the EOC, Emergency Operations Center, and did that presentation. And I'm happy to say that this year they've asked us to do even more with Leadership Pensacola, and on January 9th we will bring the entire Leadership Pensacola to the CWRF for a presentation by myself, Mr. Roberts, and Randy Sears, and Don Palmer. And then we're going to take them on a tour of the CWRF and the compost facility. So spreading some of the good things that ECUA does, and to a good group of people. Agree, he's back there with the agree sign, I like it. Some of the good things that we do here at ECUA that, you know, the public just doesn't know about, and these are 50 future leaders of Pensacola, so I think it's a very good thing, and I want to thank Mr. Roberts, Mr. Palmer, and Mr. Sears, and all of their staff for helping us to get this done.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Perkins?
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate Jim Roberts and the LSU Fighting Tigers on their SEC football championship.
The next item is open forum. Do we have anyone who wishes to be recognized? Seeing none. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a wonderful holiday. We probably will not see each other before then. Welcome again,
Thank you.
Dr. Alexander. We are adjourned. Take your books with you.